Thank you for staying with us. Nigeria is a country that is rich in gold, tin and coal and other solid minerals. With the activities of illegal miners prevalent in states like Zamfara, Niger, Osun, Ondo, amongst others, it has become difficult to generate revenue from it. President Bola Tinubu has now directed security agencies to intensify efforts to crack down on illegal miners across the country. The federal government said it had established a mining marshal corps comprising over 2,000 personnel to combat illegal miners and protect the nation's mineral resources effectively. As it is, air component of Operation Delta Safe have destroyed about 13 illegal refining sites and 10 overhead tanks in Abia and Rivers State. In a statement issued by Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngalali, the president also stressed that his administration will ensure that companies engaged in mineral exploration prioritize the health and safety of Nigerians and the host communities. Joining us in the studio for this conversation is a security expert, Darlington Moro. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you join us.
My pleasure being here once again.
Something that should be a blessing to host communities suddenly looking like deprivation, bringing them challenges and struggles. When you talk about security matters in the areas of mining, you can talk about Zamfara State, for instance. We saw how a community was sacked, and then in Jos, we saw how that caused some clashes that led to the loss of lives and property. Talk to us, first of all, how much of a challenge this has been security-wise?
Well, it has been a major challenge, particularly in the northwest and north central areas where illegal miners have capitalized in trading with solid minerals in those states, and then converting some of the proceeds of those illicit businesses into sponsoring banditry and terrorism. You could also trace partly the origins of banditry, particularly in the northwest, to the activities of illegal miners that eventually deteriorated and then became something else, when these illegal miners would recruit some militants, arm them at the same time against the state actors, particularly when they come after them. Eventually, some of these militants, of course, like I have always said here, the most dangerous thing you could do is to arm somebody for whatever reason, and those arms could be used against you at the end of the day. That is part of some of the reasons that are traceable to banditry today, when those firearms and ammunition were eventually turned against their employers. You give somebody firearm to guard you, it's difficult to collect it back from him. And so that has fueled insecurity in the country so much, particularly when those of them in those states, there are big wigs in those states who are actually indulging themselves in those activities. Federal governments, time over time, have not really, put so much in diversification of exploiting our mineral resources, particularly the solid mineral resources. Our concentration, from the 60s had been on just the crude, not even the gas. We burn and waste the gas. Some other persons are tapping into it. You talked about the Niger Delta, where you have, you talked about destruction of some smaller refineries being set up by some persons I would want to call criminals, because, of course, it's a crime to begin to do all of that. You find a lot of them in those places. They steal this crude oil, they refine them, and only God knows what they do with them at the end of the day. You mentioned Zamfara. Zamfara has gold in large quantity. Yes, I was in Zamfara, at the time under the Presidential Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons, where I was even able to nose into some activity where I saw lots of foreigners in some of these hotels who were brought in by some persons in those states to do the illegal refining for them. They were not actually working for the federal government.
Refining.
Sorry,
mining.
Exploitation of
gold.
Right. You saw what happened in Niger State, where many people died inside the pit.
Yes.
Four bodies were recovered about 2 days ago, and one of them was from Jos, one from another place, and two others like that. So the activities of these illegal miners had enriched a lot of Nigerians over time, when government was not even looking that way, really. Concentration of administration upon administration upon administration. We had the Ajakuta Steel.
Yeah.
Ajakuta Steel was supposed to get enough resources from here and was good enough to even generate revenue for this country, even beyond what we were getting from the crude. But government upon government, particularly the military government, what have they done? They were looking only at the direction of crude. And then that has helped to fuel the activities of these illegal miners.
But it was expected that the democratic government would look in that direction, and many governments...
But we've had others.
Try to invest in that, as well, the steel company, talking about Ajakuta Steel, for instance.
Which of them? Many of them.
They mentioned that they were going to revive the steel company.
That's what we kept hearing.
We kept hearing that. But is it so difficult to address these matters that we know can bring us good as a country?
Well, I think our leaders have not really gotten it right in terms of not concentrating attention on what comes out from crude. We have not. The essence of having a Ajakuta Steel was to have a diversification. And then that Ajakuta Steel company alone is good enough to enrich this country.
Absolutely. Because
fabrications and all kinds, we have the mineral resources here, and then you could do all kinds of fabrication. All this, our importation would have been reduced. We would have been exporting. We brought in foreigners to set up the project. At the end of the day, the thing went moribund. As I speak with you now, what is happening there? Nothing. But the huge resources the government at that time, invested in that project, what happened to it?
I grew up there, so I know what you're talking about. Interesting.
I didn't grow up there, but at least I have an idea about some of these things. There's no state. You see, when I talked about Nigeria being the most blessed country in the world, people wouldn't understand. You have 36 states in Nigeria, and Abuja making it about 37. There's no state in Nigeria where you don't have mineral resources. There's none. There's not one state in Nigeria, I repeat, go research on it, that cannot produce or that does not have in the belly of the earth one solid mineral resource. It's not there. All of them. So if we even say today, Britain now is even talking about stopping vehicles using petroleum products. In 2030 something, by 2035 or thereabout, any vehicle using all of that will be moved out of that place. They are moving away from that. The world is gradually moving away from
fossil fuel.
Nigeria is also trying to, Mr. President talked about it recently, that will also be reducing or moving away gradually from it. So at the end of the day, somehow, your oil, your overdependence on the proceeds from oil will get you poorer. America has stored so much that for decades and maybe for centuries to come, they might not even need your oil again. So with these solid mineral resources we have in Nigeria, government not looking particularly in that direction and leaving it to the hands of some illicit businessmen who are dealing and making good money from it.
Are you saying the introduction of these marshals to addressing the matters of security?
2,000 of them?
Yes, over 2,000.
So small.
You're saying it's not government's attempt to address the matter of security?
Not enough.
Right.
That's not enough. How would you distribute 2,000 men? How? How? I'm talking about 36 states plus Abuja, making 37, when you have all of these. Are you going to be replicating them, or how? I don't get it. Good enough, Mr. President, at this time, is looking into that ministry, where he's looking at what the minister would achieve, you know, particularly to help the economy of this country now. And to help the economy of this country, you must reprimand some persons. So if you are looking at just 2,000 men and women, I don't know whether you want to cover just one state.
All right. So, I mean, this is not the first time that, you know, even the past governments also mentioned, talked about the losses that Nigeria is going through as regards, you know, illegal mining. I also want to, you know, quote the former Minister of Mines and Steel Development, that's Lekun Adigbite, who said the federal government does not have the resources. So it also speaks to what you said about the lack of resources, manpower, 2,000 men not being enough. But now that the president has also said these men should go out and work, what should be the first point of call?
The first point is to go after the illegal miners. For those who have given licenses, to withdraw their licenses and ask people to reapply. And then you can begin to be able to monitor.
Are you sure Nigeria is actually capable of managing?
You asked the question, where do we start from? That's for me, my own opinion, where I think we should start from. If you have issued licenses to some persons, withdraw those licenses, and then begin to checkmate the activities of the illegal miners. And then, when you are now reissuing licenses, you'll be able to monitor these persons. That's where I think we should begin from. And then 2,000 men are just not enough. Not even 10,000 men and women across the country. I just told you here, I just revealed here, that there's no state in Nigeria where you do not have a solid resource.
So is that a reflection of our commitment to really addressing the issue?
I think it's the beginning point.
Right.
It's the beginning point. What Mr. President has just stated is the beginning point. And that, maybe that is because some persons from the War College visited and wrote something that looks like a project on that. And then they address the government on that too, and to say, okay, why don't we look at this? Because they are trying to look at ways and areas.
But these persons are supposed to complement the effort of the police. Or the police is supposed to complement their effort, whichever way we want to look at it.
It's a special force now.
Right.
It's a special force that is given the...
That does not mean the police's role is redundant when it comes to addressing the security issues in this regard.
They make arrest and hand over to the police.
Right.
It's not now that the sole responsibility. You have paramilitary agencies specializing in certain areas to handle certain areas. Just like you have the NSCDC. They are meant to handle a specific area. Okay, now that you have the forest guards too.
Yeah.
I think the business of the forest guards has not completely started, you know. But now we are talking about having a force or a paramilitary body agency that will specifically be going after all of that.
Illegal miners.
Yes, and I'm saying to start with 2,000 men, you have a lot of people who are unemployed, who are ready to do that job for you. All you need to that is an avenue to create employment and reduce the pressure on the government. What would be the ideal number? The ideal number for me to start with should not be less than 10,000 persons. I just told you that 36 states, you have to pursue this across the country. Not in Zamfara alone, not in Niger alone, not in Ondo, not in Plateau State alone. You have to spread these persons just like you have paramilitary agencies across the whole country. You have NSCDC across. So split 2,000 men and women across Nigeria and tell me what fraction it will give to you.
All right. You know, picking it up from your point where you said that this, to an extent, is, you know, creates a job opportunity for some persons. But if you look at it on the other side, so many persons have also blamed the rise in, you know, banditry, terrorism, and other issues that we are facing as regards our security on these illegal miners. So to an extent, help us understand the operations of this illegal mining and how it really relates to banditry and terrorism, because I really don't see it.
They generate revenues to sponsor some of these persons. And I told you that from the history of the genesis of banditry in the Northwest, some scholars have, some researchers have traced it to the activities of these illegal miners, particularly in Zamfara State. Those of them who were in Zamfara State at the time. And I told you also that there's also this report that they recruited some militants to protect them and armed them from the monies they make from that illicit business. Okay? But at a point, these same persons who were armed to protect these illegal miners against the state actors turned against their employers, perhaps for disagreement or one thing or the other. And then that was how the whole thing started. And then they started kidnapping even their own employers. And so, for illegal miners, they make a lot of monies. A lot of monies. And then there are some of them who are actually licensed to carry out that activity. Those ones are on the legal part. But we are looking at those ones who will even fight state actors, who are armed to fight the state actors in defense of the illegal miners who were making lots of monies. And then some of these monies are traceable to, of course, the use of, even though the government has not completely come out to tell us that, the bandits. And so if you arm the bandits at a time from the proceeds you made to protect you, you created an army to fight the state actors when they are coming after, because you know they will always come after you. What have you created? That is some of the challenges we had. Now, if you must, government is looking at how to tackle two things. One, how do they get their petroleum products they use in running their activities?
Yeah.
What government has done now is to create Operation Wild Wind Team. Now to tackle movement of petroleum products out of the country, across our borders, and then into the forest also. Of course, when they are moving, they move through the borders and the forest. Okay? And then bandits and terrorists will get their supply along the line. If you can cut off the supply of petroleum products to bandits and terrorists, the motorbikes that are powered and the vehicles that are powered will be reduced if they don't have enough. Okay, the Operation Wild Wind is set up by between the office of the NSA and the customs. Okay, right now that has been in operation, and in about, I think they were set up in May. They started work in May, and by July, they had achieved so much.
Interesting.
Now that is for the movement of petroleum products. Proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Government is also trying to look at how to curb or reduce all of that, but I don't think the government has done enough in that regard.
Well, because of our time, we'll move quickly now. The issue or the question some persons are asking is, so how much difference will these persons make? Talking about the marshals for mining sites. There are reports saying that some of these persons are actually protecting the companies that come to mine as against doing the work they were called to come and do, protect the host communities and not the companies coming to mine. That's some reports have said that. And so the question is, how will they be able to really address this security matter, knowing also that there has been talks about certain big names being part of, or certain big persons being part of this whole issue? How do we get to the root of it? Can we even do that? Can these persons achieve that?
Whether they'll be able to achieve that is another kettle of fish. But it's a beginning point. It shows that government is now showing so much interest, and they are now telling Nigerians that they are very much concerned
because about
how much damage that is doing to the economy of this country. Okay, and so if you are starting something at a time, it is for you to monitor, create another body to monitor. I'm sure the office of the NSA, they might be serving under the office of the NSA, that will be able to monitor their activities. But again, it boils down to the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. They will be armed.
Right.
And so if you're going to arm them as part of state actors, it means that you are also further spreading plenty of this ammunition. The other day we saw road safety, we had this argument
if they should be armed or not.
Somebody who was representing the Corps Marshal and read a statement on behalf, supposedly on behalf of the Corps Marshal, asking that the road safety should be allowed to bear arms. And then something happened in between. There were deniers upon deniers and all of that. To me, I felt it was a test of waters to know. But I'm saying that in some other climes, you don't even have all of these persons, you know, allowed to bear firearms. What they should be there to provide information.
But what they are up against, the people they are up against, wouldn't
of
they
course,
need
it's not.
to bear arms?
It's not until you bear arms that you'll be able to tell you. You see, we have too much arms in circulation, and we have too much illicit arms in circulation. There are people who are ordinarily supposed to provide information, intel, and then there are people who are supposed to come in to execute.
Right.
And now the president was speaking to the military. In this particular instance, aside from those 2,000 paramilitary bodies that will come up, he was asking the military to step in. And so, which meant that this 2,000, we do not know the format it will take yet because we've not been told. But I'm perceiving that at the end of the day, they will be asked to bear arms. And if you're asking them to bear arms, 2,000 men, like you are saying, can they face what the illegal miners are carrying? It will take time to train them on arms bearing and the use of firearms, right? And then I'm saying that 2,000 men, if we want to go by your own logic, would they be able to arm 2,000 men to then share them on across 36 states plus the Federal Capital Territory? Would they still be able to take on the illegal miners? So I think these persons perhaps will be providing information to those who will come in and then take them head on. I guess that's why Mr. President was talking to
the military,
the team from the War College,
right,
or the Defense College. I think that's why he was talking to them.
And that's the best way to go from
that. That's the best way it's supposed to go, because we cannot continue to create paramilitary bodies here and there and be arming all of them. Of course, you know that when you create these bodies and you arm all of them, you still find some bad eggs amongst them in their midst. And so when you find some bad eggs amongst them in their midst, what happens? We are still talking about the problem of proliferation of small arms and light weapons, which we've not been able to conquer. I've not seen, between the last administration and now, how much government has done to recoup or to recover and destroy small arms and light weapons. We've seen small arms and light weapons seized, recovered, and handed over to the center. But how much have we heard about destruction of these small arms and light weapons? Do they still find their ways into circulation?
All right, so very quickly, let's speak to, you know, the need for trust. There's this trust deficit to an extent between the military and the people. We also need to, you know, reignite that. For these host communities, some of them are also working in these illegal mines, and of course it is benefiting them. So how do we use some of this paramilitary to, you know, reignite trust among the people to ensure that, you know, you mentioned bad eggs and other factors, reigniting this trust to ensure that to an extent these people are the ones who rat out these illegal miners?
It's not going to. It's not just a thing between this force now, this paramilitary body that is coming up, and the people. It cuts across even the military, the police, the other paramilitary bodies that have been in existence. You see, we've had situations over time where people give out information, and eventually, those of them who give out those information are revealed. You know, we've had that. That is what led to this trust deficit issue that people are suffering today. Aside from the people, the host community and their indigenes benefiting from them, many of them too are illegal miners, are partaking in the illegal business.
Well, unfortunately, our time is up. There's also the matter of the state and resource control and the role they can also play, but our time is up. Thank you so much, security experts Darlington Umoru, for your time on the program. Thank you.
A pleasure being here.
Right. Still to come on TVC Breakfast, does Nigeria